The issue with good media is that most people can't afford that. All the essential, fair, and nuanced reporting is all stuck behind a paywall.
Look at the broad information ecosystem. So who creates it? Who shares it? Who amplifies and spreads it? And for what purpose?
Well, I think the simplest explanation, it's not a total explanation, is the extreme degree of polarization politically here.
In the past, news outlets were funded through ads and subscription models. There were limited news stations, and each town had its own local newspaper, funded primarily through advertising. With the rise of social media, people began to stop paying for traditional sources, and advertising declined. So the big question is, who pays for news?
Without journalism, things can go awry very quickly, and you see that everywhere. When you don't have strong journalism, you get situations like you had in Bell, where, government is just run rampant with corruption.
Different organizations started selling ads and taking away business from the newspapers. Physical copy sales declined, and there were alternative ways to have ads. People stopped buying the product as much because they want everything for free.
A healthy democracy relies on good information. And so as journalists, we provide that good information that allows a democracy to operate. People to be informed, for them to engage in public issues, for them to vote with information, being informed before they go and vote.
People don't always know where they're getting news. They see something about a bus crash or a plane crash, and they don't know where they see it really. It gets shared on social media. It was a little complicated because in some ways it diluted it, but in some ways it gave platforms like the New York Times, LA Times, another outlet for their stuff. But anybody can post anything, and other people might believe it.
This means that social media news could be fabricated, shallow, and misleading. Hence, the general public could no longer tell the difference between online material and real journalism. The news outlets who were still trying to do good quality reporting no longer had as many advertisers or subscribers. Without payment, these local news outlets could no longer do in-depth, objective, and verified reporting. The consequences of fake news and clickbait increased the polarization of the country, leading to extremists on both sides.
The crisis in journalism is really sort of a decades-old crisis. There's an unsustainable business model, and most news companies for so long were these for-profit entities. But so many TV and radio news outlets also rely on those newspapers to get original information and then to follow those stories.
The news industry has gone through a huge amount of turmoil. And that's true for the Long Beach Post, it's true for any journalistic endeavor.
Back in the day, there were really a lot of publications that were actually somewhat partisan. It's a partisan press.
It's easy to kind of hunker down with like-minded individuals and other people who you might have disagreed with or don't share an experience with. That adds to the polarization.
But what happened was at some point, newspapers started relying more on ads and advertising than they did on people buying a newspaper, right? Some of these newspapers were earning, very good profits for a business, but shareholders, that wasn't enough for shareholders. And they wanted more and more. And so this was just financially unsustainable.
If we can save journalism, it may help bring the country together, as high-quality journalism plays an essential role in providing realistic news from around the world. While there is no perfect financial model, several news sources have been experimenting with a non-profit model that combines government grants and private donors.
For example, the Long Beach Post, which operates in downtown Long Beach, they had a millionaire funding them for a while, but they're moving to a subscription model. So we have to make sure we support local news, and if we want the news, we got to pay a little bit for it.
I really love the nonprofit model for news because we really serve a charitable purpose. This is going to allow us to apply for a bunch of grant funding that fits right in with our mission, basically making our content available to anyone who wants it. I think this new model will help us partner with the community in a new way.
They shifted the business model from a sales model to an advertising model, and interesting enough, it's kind of swinging back to more of a subscriber or membership model.
This is going to allow us to apply for a bunch of grant funding that fits right in with our mission. One of the missions that we're going to be doing is voter education. So it's going to be, involving other media, open sourcing, basically making our content available to anyone who wants it.
The work you do as journalists is important, it's essential, it's dangerous. And we got to defend brave journalists. Most national stories in this country at some point were first a local story.
The viability of a non-profit model depends on all of us. Democracy depends on high-quality, unbiased journalism, and it is up to us to help save it. I encourage you to help save democracy by supporting your local newspapers and news stations.